It started like any ordinary Thursday in San Diego, California. I wasn't looking for anything. I had my routine, work, gym, friends on weekends, and the occasional night out. But my life felt manageable, predictable, and quiet. That's what I told myself. I liked it that way. Then I met Rachel Miller. It wasn't some movie-perfect encounter. It was a small, inconsequential moment in a coffee shop downtown. She was leaning on the counter, impatiently tapping her fingers while waiting for her latte. I noticed the way her eyes darted around the room, alive, alert, almost as if she were studying every person who passed by. When our eyes met, she smiled, not politely, not casually, but knowingly, like she already understood something about me that I hadn't realized myself. There was a spark, a tension, that kind of connection that makes your stomach twist, your pulse quicken, and your mind forget everything else. We talked and talked, not small talk, not idle chatter, real conversation about dreams, about fears, about moments that shaped us. She told me about Phoenix, about her childhood summers spent at her grandmother's house, the one where the fireflies seemed endless. She told me about the heartbreak she thought she would never recover from. I told her about my life, carefully measured and neat, but also about the parts I didn't often show anyone, the doubts, the moments of quiet loneliness. From the very first conversation, there was intensity. Too much, maybe, but intensity can be addictive. 3 weeks later, she was staying over at my apartment. Lights dimmed, city sounds filtering through the open windows, and she turned to me, eyes serious, and said, "I don't do halfway." I should have paused. I should have walked back, but I didn't. I said, "Me neither." And just like that, I was all in. Our relationship moved fast, far too fast. Every text, every phone call, every time she appeared at my door was filled with a mix of love and pressure. At first, it felt flattering. Later, it began to feel necessary. If I didn't answer quickly enough, she noticed. "You're quiet today," she'd say. "Everything okay?" And I told myself she cared. And maybe she did. But care, when combined with fear, can feel like control. 3 months in, I was offered a life-changing opportunity, a promotion in New York City, bigger responsibilities, better pay, a chance to advance my career. I was thrilled but terrified because it meant leaving Rachel. When I told her, she didn't scream, she didn't cry. She looked at me with those piercing eyes, steady and unwavering, and said, "So, what does that mean for us?" The weight of that question filled the room. I didn't answer immediately, and that silence spoke louder than any argument could. I wanted both paths. I wanted to stay. I wanted to leave. I wanted her. I wanted my life. I wanted certainty. But certainty had slipped through our fingers before we even realized it was there. The nights leading up to my decision were unbearable. Rachel and I sat across from each other, words held back, hearts open in ways that terrified us both. "If you leave, don't expect me to wait," she said, softly, not angrily, not threateningly, just a statement of fact. And I realized in that moment that love wasn't the problem. Timing was. Because the next choice I made would change everything. We decided to try long distance. Initially, it was fine. Texts, calls, FaceTime, watching each other sleep through a screen, sharing meals virtually, sending pictures of mundane moments to feel close. But soon, reality intervened. New York demanded me. Rachel's career was equally consuming. Our connection, once explosive, intense, undeniable, started to fray under the weight of separate lives. We began to argue about things that hadn't mattered before. Little things,
Missed calls, different schedules, misunderstandings. But behind every argument was fear. Fear that we wouldn't survive the distance. Fear that one of us would find someone else. Fear that the love we had built wouldn't be enough. And yet, even as the distance stretched between us, the intensity remained. The late-night conversations, the longing glances on video calls, the whispered, "I miss you," at the end of each day. It all reminded us that our love was still there, still raw, still impossible to ignore.
Months passed. Our long-distance love began to feel like walking a tightrope. Every conversation carried the weight of unspoken expectations. Rachel said, "I need to know that this is real, that we're not just holding on to the idea of each other." And I tried. I tried to reassure her, but the truth was, I didn't know. I loved her, yes, but my life was moving forward, and so was hers. And the timing was wrong. Every reunion brought hope and pain simultaneously. Each weekend together felt like magic, but each goodbye tore us apart again. We were addicted to the highs, terrified of the lows, and slowly realizing that love alone might not save us. The tension between us grew with every passing week. It wasn't just the distance anymore, it was the constant push and pull of love and frustration. Rachel had always been intense, but now that intensity became almost unbearable. Every text, every call, every little miscommunication felt like a test we weren't prepared to pass. One Friday night, we argued over something trivial, whether I had ignored her text while at work. I was exhausted, she was frustrated, and both of us were running on emotion. What started as a minor disagreement escalated quickly. "You don't care about me anymore," she shouted over FaceTime, her voice cracking with a mixture of anger and pain. "I do care," I snapped back, my own patience gone. "I'm trying to build a life for us, but you make it impossible to breathe sometimes." There was a pause, a silence that hung heavy. Then she said, quietly, almost whispering, Maybe this is never going to work." That sentence hit harder than anything else. It wasn't a threat, it wasn't even an argument, it was a quiet surrender, and the weight of it pressed down on me like nothing I'd ever felt. We ended the call that night without resolving anything. Sleep didn't come. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about every moment we'd shared. The laughter, the passion, the connection, and how fragile it all felt now.
2 months later, Rachel flew to New York for a weekend. There was excitement in the air, tinged with the fear we both carried like a secret. Seeing her in person again felt like a jolt to the heart. Every laugh, every touch, every glance reminded me why I had fallen so hard for her. We spent the weekend revisiting old spots, walking through Central Park, sharing coffee in the early morning mist, and talking about our dreams. For those 48 hours, nothing else existed. It was just us, two people who loved each other desperately, fully aware of the fragility of their time together. But underlying every smile was a tension we couldn't shake. Every moment of joy was shadowed by the knowledge that reality was waiting just outside the hotel room. On the last night, lying together in the quiet darkness, Rachel said, "I can't keep doing this if it doesn't have a future. I can't keep falling for someone who isn't fully here." I knew she was right, but saying it out loud didn't make it hurt any less. I wanted to stay, to hold her and pretend the world didn't exist. But we both knew pretending couldn't last. Months later, I discovered the truth. Rachel had met someone else. Not because she stopped loving me, not because she wanted to hurt me, but because he was there in the moments I couldn't be. He was her support when I was 1,000 miles away. He was her safe space,
and in her absence, I had been replaced without malice. But still, the wound was deep. When I confronted her over a video call, she didn't hide it. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You left first. You chose your life over us." And she was right. I had left. I had chosen the opportunity, thinking love would survive it. But love alone couldn't bridge the distance, the timing, and the choices we made. We loved each other, fully, completely, desperately. But timing ruined everything. It wasn't betrayal. It wasn't lack of feeling. It was the cruelest truth of all. The right person at the wrong time can hurt more than anyone else ever could. Even now, years later, the memories linger. The late night calls, the city walks, the touches, the words. We didn't have forever, but we had enough to know how deeply love can burn. And sometimes, love is just not enough.